All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. And I'll read the preamble as required by law. Pursuant to Chapter 2, the Act of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members, the meeting/hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. Viewers can visit a website here, formerly PAC TV, to watch video replay of this meeting on Duxbury YouTube. Well, the meeting is now in order. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are here tonight primarily as an informational meeting. Rainey Reed, our town manager, has presented us this evening with a revised budget for fiscal 2026. And with it, some information regarding the possibility of an overrun. As I said at my outset, this is more of informational, since none of us have seen this information prior to this evening. Also, after his remarks, we will answer some questions. He will answer some questions for us. We have some details we want to work out. But beyond that, there'll be no votes taken this evening. So we have been delayed somewhat technologically, so we apologize for the late start. But we are here now, and as soon as Rainey finishes distributing his packets, we can get started.
Fred, while we're doing that, Cindy has raised her hand. We're gonna unmute her.
Okay,
And Cindy, do you have something that you need to ask us? She's muted.
Cindy,
You
you're
need to
muted.
unmute.
Yeah,
There you go.
it was a while ago. I just wanted to let you know that I could see and hear.
Okay, great.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
that.
That's all.
That's appreciated.
Our tech guru is not with us this evening, so we're muddling through as best we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take your time, Rainey, when you're ready.
Thank you.
We hand that up. All right, we're done.
For you. Okay. All right. I apologize for my tardiness. So I've given you 4 sheets of information. Cut to the chase. The first is the DLS sheet, looks like this.
Yes.
The override amount that we have arrived at is $5.8 million. Mary and I are here to explain that to you and how we got there. There's a number of ways to do that. Do you wanna walk me through this? So, you've been given a handout that looks like this. Sustainable Budget Task Force Forecast, Revenues Available Funds. It's a 1-page document, double-sided.
It's on the screen now.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
I don't know that I can make it any bigger than.
Yeah, I think the folks at home may be able to see it, but we all have hard copies here. They look like this.
We do have a technical person here, just as long as admitted.
Okay, so
One thing I do want to point out, everything I've distributed has been emailed to everybody in this room. All the finance committee, all the board members. Danielle, I'll leave it to you to give to the school committee or anybody that needs it. It's gone to the press, whoever wanted it, it's out there.
Thank you.
and it will be posted to the website as
Yes.
soon as we're finished.
Yeah, either tonight or tomorrow.
Okay. So what you're looking at here is the forecast as produced through collaboration with the Sustainable Budget Task Force. There are 2 pages. The first page is our available revenues and the second page is the expenditures. So this is modeled very much like the format that we went through at last Monday's meeting downstairs in the Ellison Room, where we talked about our revenues that are available to support our budget. And then our expenditures, which is the town's spending plan for the current and coming fiscal years. And so this is modeled in the same fashion as charts that you've seen before. And so what we're looking at here is the revenues and other available funds used to support the budget. Highlighted in yellow on row 8 is the amount of the override that Rainey has just described for you. The option for FY 26, the budget numbers that are included in this forecast are the option 2 or real needs budgets as it has been, as it's been so called. What happened was all of our departments were asked to put together 2 budget models. And the first one was a level funded up to 2.5%, which the finance committee has already reviewed and recommended. And it was also presented to the select board. So the second part of our process, as we've talked about, this is a process that we need to go through. So the second part of the process is to now look at the real needs budget. The town manager has gone through the real needs budget, and in some areas, there were some scale backs. And not all of, for example, not all of the new positions were supported that were presented and requested by those departments. So once that exercise was complete and we knew what our option 2 budget looked like, we were able to put that option 2 budget into this model and work on this model with the Sustainable Budget Task Force, which we have done. And the task force has unanimously endorsed this model to be presented to this group here this evening, as well as to the community. What we're looking at is a model that includes the requests for, like I said, option 2. And in doing so, forecasting out revenues into future years that include things like the standard Proposition 2.5 increase, estimates for new growth based on conversations with our building inspector and our assessor to understand what's happening in the market. Projections reflective of state aid averages. State aid has been projected using a 5-year rolling average to forecast out a 5-year model for state aid. Local receipts were analyzed individually, and we did this over the course of the summer with the task force, looking at each and every one of our local receipts and any opportunities that we may have through fee increases or new programs to develop any additional revenue streams. So that those are rows 11 and 12 on this model. And then below that are the additional funding sources that the community has access to support our operations. Things like our pension reserve, some sinking funds that are bond premiums that we've received on previous debt issues that offset the cost of debt going forward. Indirect costs that are recovered from our enterprise funds for the cost of the administrative services that the town provides to support those entities. And all of those have been projected out through FY 2030, as you can see in this chart. So with that being said, when we put the models into the chart without the override, as we talked about, each of those years, fiscal 26 and all successive years, reflected or revealed a structural deficit. And in order to address that deficit, the town is proposing a $5.8 million override to support those operations. On the right-hand side, you'll see some assumptions that were used in some of our revenue forecasting, and you'll see some more in just a moment when we look at the expenditures. So what we're anticipating is that the general fund budget for FY 26, as it is being proposed, with the hope that the community will recognize the need and the value of supporting a $5.8 million override, that would result in a general fund budget of $100,694,372. The override was sized such that it will address and satisfy the obligations for fiscal 26, but that it will also contain sufficient capacity to address our budgetary needs through FY 2030. So what that means in terms of an override is that should the $5.8 million be supported in year one, which would be FY 26, not all of that override would be utilized for taxation. And it would result in excess levy capacity. That would continue through the successive years of this model. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. So if I flip to page 2. Page 2 is the expenditure model. And this is summarized down to the functional categories that are used for budgeting purposes. So the first set of lines, rows 40 through 50, represent our departmental budgets, or the functional areas of our organization where the services are provided. Below that, in rows 53 through 67, those are other amounts that are raised in our operating budget, some of which are specific and individual articles that are recommended at town meeting. And some of these items are items that are embedded in the budget, that are not brought forward to town meeting because they're non-negotiable. For example, row 56 and row 57, those are what are called cherry sheet charges, or they are the state aid assessments. So you've heard me say that the state gives us money for state aid, but at the same time, they take it away and we are participating in funding various programs. The take away part is rows 56 and row 57. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. So based on the FY 26 expenditure budget that you see here, the departments, we are recommending $96,990,035 to support the activities of all of the services that we provide across all of these functional areas. That represents a 7.02% increase in expenditures for our departments. And so with the override, what that would essentially do is reset our baseline or reset our tax levy for FY 26. And once that reset is done, then going forward, we are subject to the standard Proposition 2.5 limitation on the tax levy in each of the successive years. So it's a one-time adjustment that is applied to FY 26 that increases the levy, and then successive years are restricted by the Prop 2.5 limitation. Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
Perfect, because I think there's been some differing interpretations of how that works. So I just wanted to explain that. So what we've done with the expenditure budgets is we have gone through and applied some assumptions to increase those or to forecast an increase in those functional areas in the successive years beyond FY 26. And you'll see those assumptions listed over in the right-hand side. I do want to call your attention to row 47, which is our debt service. And our debt service, there is not a standard escalation, if you will, because that debt service number that you're seeing is an actual set of numbers based on our existing debt model for all of the debt that we currently have issued, as well as forecasting in the cost of debt for the DPW facility and the seawall. So all of that is embedded. The DPW and the seawall debt will be coming on in phases through the course of construction. And that will begin in FY 27, but they will both be fully embedded into our budget beginning in FY 28. So does everybody see that increase in the debt service for FY 28? So this model that you're looking at is inclusive of the existing voter-supported projects that the town is currently undertaking. Okay?
Something rolling off.
There will be debt rolling off, so I believe, did we hand this out yet? Oh, We have copies of the debt model.
And really don't
Do you have
wanna do,
one of these?
Yeah, I think.
Actually, let me quickly call it up so the folks at home can follow along. Okay, so this is our debt model, and let me give you a little bit of context to this. Hang on, got all kinds of pop-up windows showing up here. All right, so it's color coded, and I will give you the legend for those color codes. The items that are highlighted in blue are debt service, that is the responsibility of the water enterprise. The items highlighted in yellow are the voter-approved excluded debt projects. So those are debt exclusions. The items highlighted in coral or peach are items that are included in the levy. They are non-debt excluded. So they are projects that did not require a ballot vote and therefore are paid within the levy or the existing revenues that we have. They're not voter
Which
approved.
colors are those again?
That would be the coral or peach
Yes,
color.
COA center expansion,
Correct. That would be the first one on row 78.
right?
That color scheme is debt within the levy. The purple on page 2, you'll see the first purple one. That is debt that is the responsibility of the Community Preservation Act, EPC. And so those are the 4 categories of debt. And when you look at the model, you can see where we have numbers in existing fiscal years. If you look at a piece of debt and look to the right of the last number, that's the year that it would be dropping off. So for example, let me get to the top. So if we just start at the top, the Percy Walker Pool on rows 27 through 29. In FY 25, which is the current year that we are in, we will be making our last payment for that Percy Walker Pool construction and engineering, as well as the Chandler School roof repairs. So that is maturing this year and we will not see that expense next year. Does that make sense on how to read the debt model?
Yes.
Perfect. And way down at the bottom, you'll see all of the subtotaling. So you can get an idea of our total debt profile, as well as how much is supported by the tax levy, how much is exempt, which is the voter debt exclusions. And then the total for water and CPC. One of the questions that we have been getting asked a lot is when are we going to finish paying off for the high school and middle school construction project? The last payment for that project will happen in fiscal 2038. Okay? Any questions on how to read the debt model?
I'm curious. Just, I don't know why, the police station construction, the principal is declining. As it goes out, I always thought it would remain steady through the life.
So there's various ways that we can issue debt. Typically, we like to see level principles, because it helps to facilitate the budgeting process. However, depending on who issued the debt and what was happening at the time, there are different ways you can do level debt service payments. You can do level principal and declining interest. You can front load principal and interest and have a declining balance depending on when things are gonna roll off your schedule.
Okay,
So it really, there's a combination and it depends on what was happening financially at the
when
time
that debt was brought up.
when that debt was brought on.
Thank you.
So this debt model has been built into the forecast that we are looking at here in order to project how we are going to support our expenditures going forward for the next 5 years. Sound good?
Go for
All
it.
right, so at this time, I think I'll flip it over to Rainey and we can go through the option 2 budget so everybody understands what has been included.
thank you, Mary. So I'm gonna, this reading is big, but
We call that one up.
it's like 30 pages, like. So what I tried to do was boil it down to make it easy to follow. Mary and I have been working on this the last 8 days. I'm just gonna walk you through. So if you take a look at the very, very, very top. You'll see FHIWZAB. What I want you to look at is column W first. So that's column one. That's the FY25 adopted budget. That's the world we're living in now. Column two, just to the right of that, is the option one budget that was voted by the finance committee, voted to recommend by the finance committee, and was the budget that I presented 8 days ago, or 10 days ago to the select board.
So-called balanced budget.
That is the balanced budget, yeah. That's right. Next to that is column three, which was the initial departmental request for their option two budget, the override budget we call it. Column four is the one I am recommending for the option two budget. Column five are any notes associated with that. And then column six are any of the costs, whether they went up or down. Now, I flagged the bigger ones in yellow. It wasn't because I'm trying to hide anything, I'm showing you actually absolutely every line of our ledger. But I just hit the biggies so we could kind of cover those tonight. We can always go back and I'm happy to answer any questions on smaller increases or decreases. So with that, on page one, line 16, column 4, you'll see that the, by the way, let me just give you a general overview. Any positions that were contemplated for a layoff in the option one budget have all been restored. And there were some proposed increases in some budgets, some made it, some didn't. So I'll just leave that until we get further down. So,
Brady,
yes, please.
does this include the compensation study that we heard Monday night?
Yeah, yes, and we'll get to that too.
Okay.
So these are just the line items for the operating. Let's just go through this and we'll come back to that. So column 4, line 16, I restored the RIF position there. I had originally proposed an assistant town manager, but that has since been removed. Line 28 is an addition. That's $50,000 for engineering and consultants. We have found over the years that we have had a need for. We need to have the ability to be able to hire engineers on an as needed basis. For different projects that have gone on in a number of different departments. So that's the reason I added the 50,000 in there. Flipping the page over to accounting on line 66, column 4, we see. We have restored the layoff in that position, and the department head has decided to not move forward with including a new position, which would have been a budget. On page 3, line 92, we have restored the layoff position in the office of the assessors. Further down on line 122, page 3, you'll see that there's a increase to the seasonal rate in the hours for sticker sales. Because the demand has been so great on the treasurer collector's office, we need to have, we need to make sure that we have the ability to sell stickers, and we need to make sure we have the staff to do so. On page 4, line 150, there's been a modest increase there just to reflect the annual averages. Nancy and I go through that line item, and we try and monitor the trend. So in this case, we're recommending the addition of just under $6,000. On line 165, same page. Under human resources, there's an increase. We're recommending the amount of $12,000, an increase of $2,800, which includes additional testing due to increased prices for medical services. There's pre-screening for applicants. Also on line 168, option 2 includes the provision for the increased costs for background checks in the amount of $1,500. And then we have 174 under benefits administration fees. We're increasing the line by $315 for FSA fee. On page 5. Line 185 under salaries and wages, there was discussion about whether or not to add IT support tech position. We decided not to move forward with that at this time. We're in the process of hiring a new CTO for our IT department. We figured we would leave it up to the individual that we hire to make that decision at a future date. On line 190, also under IT, we corrected the number to reflect the actual expenditures. So we get reduction from the original option. Below that, consulting.
Excuse me, it might be helpful for people listening in, that when you just mentioned the line,
Yeah.
you mentioned what the category is.
Oh, sure,
Like,
sorry.
216 tax title was the next one on the list, but I think for some people out there, they may not have this in front of them, or they may not be able to see that screen. It would be helpful to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Good
kind of
idea. Thank you. Line 191, which is consulting services under the information systems budget. The amount there is $15,000, which is a new amount for network consulting. Below that, on line 192, is the training and education program under IT. The amount is $8,000, which was corrected to reflect actual expenditures. And below that, on line 193, other professional technical services. That line item, $58,000, was also corrected to reflect actuals. Moving down below. Under, as you just mentioned, friends, line 217, under tax title. We had a slight increase there, for legal services. As a result of new changes in the law, we now $66,000. Again, I apologize, over on the right-hand column is where you should see the dollar change. I didn't get them all, but I will by the time we get to our next meeting, which I'll talk about. On page 6. Under the town clerk, intermittent and seasonal help. The amount is $24,000, and that is a permanent increase to keep capacity for on-off election years. We find a lot of fluctuation in this line item, so we're trying to address the number of elections in a given year to try and better address the election cycles. Further down on page 6, line 256, Conservation Commission salaries and wages. Per the department head, it no longer includes the upgrade for the administrative assistant position. So that line item is now 113,992. One down to page 7, the planning board. Salaries and wages, line 285. The amount is just under $250,000, and that includes a new position, which is an assistant planning director / environmental planner position. For that, line 293, under other professional technical services for the planning board. It's recommended to have, to include $5,000 in that for an accessory dwelling unit regulations consultant. Just below that, 297 under advertising, $3,000 in that line for an accessory dwelling unit regulations public hearings to make sure we can cover the cost, because there will be several hearings related to that. Then down toward the bottom, under facilities management, line 309, salaries and wages. There are 2 new positions contemplated in this department. One is a maintenance manager, and the other being an administrative assistant. So those 2 positions is just under $145,000. I will point out, this is one of the departments that, when the Sustainable Budget Task Force is going through their review, realized that there is an extreme need to be able to better address the 70 some odd structures we have in this town, both the town and school side. And this is to help make sure that those issues were taken care of. On page 8, line 321, the amount is $610,000, which was increased to reflect the real needs to maintain the 60+ town and school facilities. It's an increase over the option 1 budget of $160,000. A little bit further down on the line 331, also under facilities, building and grounds maintenance supplies. It's a $10,000 increase to reflect the real needs, also again to maintain the town and school facilities. And then just below that, line 337, memberships and dues on the facilities. It's $350 for the Mass Facilities Association membership for the department. Down to line 343, line 344 under the police department. The number is just over $3.8 million. And what this does, it restores both police officers to their positions. Plus it adds 2 new patrol positions to allow the PD to go to 4 sectors, and they can drop to 3. And there's an injured on duty or sick person, or a person on sick leave or any kind of leave.
Randy, how many patrol positions do we have currently?
I wanna say 28.
Mhm.
28?
Yeah.
So this proposes to keep the 28 and add 2 more.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Line 345 overtime. With the addition of the new staff, you see the numbers being slightly reduced from the option one budget. By about $60,000 to $575,000, and the reason for that is the new staff has the potential for a reduction in overtime. I say potential because emergent situations are just that, emergent and unpredictable. On page 9, down toward the bottom, under the heading of, also under the heading of police, line 381, public safety supplies. There's an increase of $1,000. This is the cost of ammunition. The training sessions required. Just below that, under uniforms and other clothing, there's an additional amount of just over $10,000, which includes the uniforms for honor guard, bike unit, et cetera. The cost has increased significantly. Turning to page 10. Under the fire department, salaries and wages, and $395. The amount is just under $680,000, because in this case, it includes the restoration of the 2 layoff positions, and it adds 4 firefighters, estimated at about $113,000 per firefighter.
Can I give you head counts on that? There are currently 26 firefighters, 28 including the chief and the deputy. And adding 4 more would bring the staff up to 32.
Just below that, on 396. Adding 4 firefighters, 1 per shift, will bring the fire department from 6 people per shift, and will allow the fire department to drop to 6 during an injured on duty and absences. Below that is the overtime line. Figure's been reduced by just over $30,000, which, in spite of that, still includes court time, bereavement, and other coverage that was not previously budgeted, plus the rates do increase in. Page 11. Also in the fire department, line 1411. The amount will decrease for equipment and rental leases, because they're related mostly to copiers, because the IT department covers the cost of copiers. Below that, ambulance billing services on line 412. That number is representing 3% of the billed charges. Down toward the bottom, on line 429 for protective clothing. It's an increase of $7,000, and that's for turnout gear. At roughly $5,000 each for each firefighter, and there's staggered expiration dates, so we don't replace everything at once, we replace it incrementally. At the top of page 12, also in the fire.
Is it about the turnout gear?
Yeah,
Okay, so, you've been asked the question, and I'll try to anticipate it, Alex. Does this reflect the additional staffing? Yeah. So the fire chief, on a regular basis, seeks grant opportunities for turnout gear, and he's been very successful through a lot of state earmarks and other opportunities. So that's the expectation here. You got it.
At the top of page 12. Medical supplies on 432. You'll see the replenishment of ambulance supplies. Just under $3,000. We used to get them for free at the hospital, but they don't get stuck later. On line 443 under municipal services, you see the restoration of the position that would be laid off. Under the option 1 scenario, just over $30,000 to do that. On page 13. Under line 477. $84,700. This is, that's not the amount, but it's an increase hourly of the hourly rate to $20 to be more competitive and attract seasonal employees. That's the increase there. Page 14. Line 529, school department operating budget. This number represents the option 2 figure as voted by the school committee. Moving along to page 16. Under the natural resources heading on 597. This is restoring the skilled labor position that we have been laid off in the option one scenario. Further down on that same page, under the lands and natural resources, you'll see an additional $6,500, which is included to reflect the cost of the actual needs for the building and grounds maintenance supplies. In the lands and natural resources division, just a little bit below that, and then 616. Same name, building and grounds maintenance supplies. It's an increase of another $5,000 there, which is an increase to reflect the cost of supplies and actual needs. And further down, the DPW administration. Salaries and wages on 637, that's the restoration. Laid right off into the option one scenario. Way down at the bottom, under license stipends, for the DPW administration. We are required to have an OSHA safety officer, and with that comes a stipend. Be that, and that dollar amount is $7,500. Bringing us to page 17. On line 645, consulting services. This is an increase of $3,800. Over the option one budget. And this is $6,200 for safety net, OSHA, and BLS safety compliance. Just below that, engineering services. This is a requirement for dam inspections. And below that, MS4 permit. We're let's see, we're in year 8 of the MS4. We have to have EPA permit compliance. And that amount increases by $5,500. Down toward the bottom, the vehicle maintenance, line 670. You'll see that we've restored one of the laid off positions. One of the mechanics in that position, and with that, just below that, 2 lines below, it's 672. We're restoring the clothing allowance for one of the positions as well. Just below that, vehicle maintenance services, we're also restoring the RIF there as well. Page 18, highway and road maintenance, salaries and wages. We are restoring the 2 RIF positions in that category with just over $100,000. Page 19, line 747, overtime. This includes reduced hours of operating at the transfer station. There was a slight savings there. No, the slight increase there. 34. Is that an increase? That number should-
No, it's the reduction. I know there's so many numbers here.
Yeah. Oh, right. Gotcha. Okay. Anyways, it includes the reduced hours of operating at the transfer station. With or without the override, we're still going to move forward with the reduced hours of the operation of the transfer station because it makes sense, because it's still saving. Down in line 757, under waste removal, there's an increase there as a result of the tipping fees going up. Further down, line 775, under sewer. Salaries and wages, the figure there was brought to 0 because that was moved to the DPW admin. Then on page 20. Line 202 under cemetery, there's an increase in summer help, which was actually per the request of the finance committee. In the amount of this seasonal summer help, by the way, in the amount of just over $19,000. A little further down. There are retort repairs, which we're showing an increase of about $5,000. Moving on page 21, under council on aging. Line 843, there's a new $22,500 benefits only increase for part-time to full-time cafe manager. It's a grant funded position. So in this case, the town would be picking up the cost of the benefits only for that position, not the salary. And just below that, the overtime, this figure can be decreased if the cafe manager is increased to full-time. Otherwise, we need vacation coverage, which would cost more. Next, the line 22, top food supplies. You see an increase of $15,000, and that's a result of the costs and volume to both increasing. Down toward the bottom, line 909, the library, you'll see that the library would be restoring their hours on Sunday and adding a children's library and no new division. Moving over to page 24, at the top. For the Percy Walker Pool, intermittent and seasonal, we'll see an increase of just, $9,600, which is an increase rate in the rate for the lifeguards, which is aimed toward recruitment and retention purposes. Page 25, under beach operations, we are adding a new assistant beach ops manager. The position is sorely needed. We can't run the beach with just one operations manager. So you'll see that that's an increase of just over $83,000. Right below that is another increase, in the amount of $36,000, which is due to, we need additional coverage for closures and for escorting for future years, should we move forward with that. Page 26. And you see the Fourth of July celebration up there. We've included this in the operating budget as opposed to a standalone article. It's predictable, you know, it happens every year. This way, it's fully covered. In the operating budget. Page 28. You will see the transfer to the health trust, which equates to $15,830. Below that, you see the figure for Medicare, which is going up significantly since this year. And then the workers' comp, which is driven by claims expense. And just below that is the unemployment line. In the option one budget, we have funded over $500,000. And in the option two budget, since there wouldn't be any layoffs, we put it back to zero. Further down, and then property, and then property and general liability, you see that the cost increase has been reflected there. And then further down, the reserve fund appropriation would be brought up from 150 to back up to 200, where it's been. That's sort of the general one. Now, I will tell you, as you can see yourself, not all of the numbers have been flagged, but I will be doing that because I have to. If there's an increase or decrease in any of these lines, whether it be $1 or 100,000, once the article is laid out for the contingency budget, we will actually go through this exercise of hitting all of those highlights. That's how it works. In terms of the way to do that. It's even, the DOR requires it for an overlay. So that's how it would be meted out. So it's very similar to what we do with the omnibus under Article 5, which would be Article 5A, where we go through 93 lines. There's 99 lines, we go through all of them, salaries and expenses. The chair of the finance committee makes a motion, goes through the number, she reads it all off. People have the opportunity to hold, they have questions, they can ask them. And then the bottom line is voted for Article 5A. It would be very similar to Article 5B, and that's one of the things we're working on now, is actually crafting that article so that it will be laid out appropriately to make sure that we've captured all of the changes. Like I said, it's $1 or 100,000, and flag them all so that everybody will have a chance. The party will have a chance to see exactly what they're buying in the old. We have the opportunity to stop the conversation, talk about it, see it. So that's how it works. It works exactly like it does with our.
Under facilities, are we still contemplating moving all facilities under gate?
It's a collective bargaining issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting topic because one of the things that the Sustainable Budget Task Force has talked about, and I know the Finance Committee has too, is when you look at an override such as this, one of the things they've contemplated is right sizing things. Not because the position was. When the position was first created 10 years ago, it was new. Nobody really knew what that meant. We all had an idea of what that meant. But now that we're into our third facilities manager, we see what really is needed to support that position. And in this case, it's partly staff, but it's also funding. Because we're sending one person to go out and do the job of at least 3. And we're asking an awful lot because it's just not sustainable or attainable. So it doesn't work in the long term, and it's not realistic. I think that's one of the things that the Sustainable Budget Task Force looked at. Because a lot of these additions to staff are pointing exactly at sustainability. Does it make sense in 2024 to have the same staffing levels that we did 50 years ago? I don't think anybody can say yes to that. Particularly for fire and police. It's not the same world, it's not the same kind of call. They're not, the firefighters run out and fight fires, sure. I don't need to make a commercial for them because they do a capable job, certainly more than capable job themselves. But when they're running 7 times a day, you know, all day long, you know, if they got 7 calls at once. You can't do it with the staff that you have. And that's what I think the Sustainable Budget Task Force is seeking. Same is true with this. These numbers, it'd be nice if we could keep them small. The population's grown, the nature of crime has grown, police department. The variety, the depth of involvement in both departments. I think we're foolish not to move forward with something. That's why I recommended it here.
I think I have a better understanding why you were struggling earlier with coming up with this number as quickly as we've all been looking for. And there's an awful lot here, a lot of moving parts, schedules that had to be thoroughly vetted. So thank you for
You're
bringing
welcome.
this
Thank
to
you for
us.
saying that. I appreciate
I think everybody here is glad that this is out and now we can
Yeah.
think about it and digest it.
We thank you for your patience.
Yeah, we do, because I couldn't have done it without these 2 ladies right here.
Understood.
Yeah, right now.
And so thank to 2 of you as well. Just a couple of questions about the budget. And I think after I speak, I think Cindy's got her hand up, but maybe not.
No, but somebody
Yeah,
else
that's
does.
just a me. Okay, thank you. Do you have a breakdown between the cost of restoring the layoffs and the cost of what the new ads are? So how much of that number, the override number, is really effectively restoring those people that we've all felt terrible about?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
And then the cost of the ads that you want, you obviously pared down the list. It was much
Yes.
more extensive before,
right.
but still 8 to 10 people, I guess.
We can get
Do
you.
you have those 2 costs?
Yeah, we do.
Because that's a big element of
Absolutely.
that override number.
We
And
do.
I think you've attempted to answer that question in advance by suggesting that these are the people we need to get the job done that wasn't getting done well in the past.
Correct. Yep, that's a perfect way to state it. And yes, we can have it. I'll go on just a touch more. We're planning on having joint meeting of finance committee, select board, fiscal advisory, school committee on January 9th. Here downstairs, just like we did, it'll be a month to the day. So we can have everybody together in the room. We're gonna go through this again, of course, as you might imagine, the option 2 budget. Be able to flag things a little more carefully so that people can really see what everything is doing, what's happening, have questions, have answers to questions like the one you just asked, Frank. Show me what the cost of the restoration of the positions is, and show me what the cost of the new position is, so we can easily put all that together. That way we can have a bigger, broader, more open conversation and involve as many people as we can get.
The other question I had, well, I have a couple more, sorry.
Yeah.
The seawall impact and the DPW facility impact. I think you've stated that in FY 28. There'll be completed projects and therefore the big nut will hit the books.
Yeah.
Is that now combined into that override number as, I'm trying to understand the impact, because we talk about this all the time, that our taxes are going to go up because of an override.
Yeah.
But we already have baked in projects that haven't hit the books yet.
Mhm.
So then there's the seawall, which is now luckily only 15 million, think of that only. DPW, which is 27 plus or minus. Are they embedded in this projection that? they're
Yes, they
within?
are. So I'm gonna ask you to pull out the, let me call it back up so the folks at home can, follow along. Hang on. I'm gonna ask you to pull out the revenue model that we started this conversation with. And on page 1, if you look at row 7.
exclusion voter approved.
Correct. So those are the projects that the community has supported through a debt exclusion. So you voted affirmatively at town meeting and then you went to the ballot box and voted affirmatively. to
The
support
schools,
that.
good.
Yep, schools, Percy Walker Pool, police station, and included in those numbers is an estimate for the seawall and the DPW facility. So you'll see that there is an increase in 2028 as well as an increase in 2029. And that will continue out. So the debt exclusion fluctuates each year because
Understood.
there are pieces of debt that mature and as we talked about, the declining balance of those that are not a level debt service payment. But the short answer to your question is yes, those have been included in the model that you're looking at, and they are included under row 7 for the revenue side of that. And then for the expense, it's on page 2. Under row 47, so category 700, which is debt service.
Okay,
So
well,
we
frankly, it doesn't seem to be moving that much.
right,
in those
because
years.
there's maturity that's happening
Maturities.
in between times.
Well, I guess what people are struggling with is how far is my tax bill going to go up? Is it just going to go up enough to meet this $55.8 million override? Or are we gonna get hit with that and the seawall and then DPW facility after that, so that the tax increase is initially this, and I don't know how, the way you're describing this, I can get an answer.
Okay, so let me try it this way, and we'll probably have to have this conversation several times, because I know that there's a lot of anxiety around that for sure. So the budget projections, when we put a budget together, we have to put together both revenue projections and expenditure projections. And that is inclusive of the payments for the seawall and the DPW facility. So we know what those are, and those are included in our budget model. When we built the initial budget model, it revealed a structural deficit, which is why we're talking about an override. But once you put that override number into the equation, and it's a one-time reset of your tax levy, it goes into the tax levy for FY 26. Taxes will increase in FY 26 to reflect the new size of the tax levy. And that is inclusive of the projects for DPW and seawall. So as you look to the outer years, 27, 28, 29, the cost of those projects
Are embedded.
are embedded in this model.
But not costs, so those are embedded, but, and because we have voted and agreed to do those projects. What
Correct.
about projects like the PFAS mitigation that are on the horizon, but we know it's coming, but those aren't considered in this.
They have been voted.
No, I understand
there's no
that, but I mean,
appropriation.
it's, again, to Friend's point. We need to look at what we know, it's not just what's on the paper, but we know there are some other big hits coming along with this.
Potentially. So if there is any movement on PFAS, and I know you guys are scheduled for a presentation in the coming weeks, I think that's at your January 6th meeting.
Yeah.
A project of that magnitude, because I believe their first priority project is $38 million. There is no way that would be funded within the levy. That would have to be a debt exclusion, so that would be over and above anything that we're talking about here. And no, that has not been factored in because there's no guarantee that the community would support something to that level right now. And for us, our priority at this time is to make sure that we restore our operations and continue to provide the high quality services that we need to provide to this community.
Sustainable.
Right.
Please, don't worry. Again, are your numbers here inclusive of the presentation we got on Monday night? Of the compensation stuff?
Yes.
How?
Well, it's listed on that, or do you? On this page. On the back, I think, it's not here, but
It's like a lump sum, or is it just,
What was the cost of that?
If you look on the expenditure side. There's the personnel bylaw under 2026, you'll see the amount. Oh, reading, so,
164.
before,
oh yeah, sorry,
under expenditure.
yeah, personnel bylaw, row 64. Go over to FY, go to 2026, you'll see it there at 600,000. That's everything. Collective bargaining agreements. The compensation classification study. Collective bargaining agreements for 6 units.
So it's,
So is
it's
your
across the
feeling-
board for all staff, not just
Yep.
the people in the personnel plans.
Correct.
It goes to everybody.
All of our employees.
Good, right, because I didn't see that separated out, so I was curious about the collective bargaining piece.
It's all 10 employees.
Thought that was just for the.
All
personnel
graded.
Graded, sorry, that was a
Okay.
question.
so is that is it your feeling that that 600,000 would carry us through 2030?
So,
Well. Go ahead, you say your thing, I'm gonna say something.
okay,
Yeah.
so the
Okay.
reason that there is not anything to the right of them is because when we talked about the expenditures above it in rows 40 through 49. Escalation factors have been applied to the entire budget for those departments, which is inclusive of salary lines. So those adjustments would now be, for budgeting purposes, up above. And if we included it down below on row 64, it would be double counting it. You understand that? Is everybody
So
following?
the 600,000 sort of right set stuff, and then moving forward, you have those assumptions baked into the other columns.
So they are rolled into the budget expenditure lines that you see in 40 through 49.
Right.
Okay, good.
Do other members of the finance committee have any questions tonight? I think they've done a good job with the presentation, to say the least.
Friend, you had asked a question. Maybe a meeting or two ago about, what. Committee members, staff, people can and can't say about an override. I have a. Document that I shared with the department heads, at our last department head meeting on Wednesday. About that question, and I provided the info to all the staff, board and committee. I'm going to be providing all that information to the staff. Board and committee members regarding campaign laws related to overrides, which you can and can't say, which you can and can't do. Social media, which you can and can't like. I've got all that information, but 3 or 4 questions came up since Wednesday. And it was about an hour before this meeting, I didn't have time to do it. But I've got KP Law's final answer on everything, so I'll make sure that when we send it out to the board, finance committee, everybody's gonna have the same thing. But staff. Volunteers,
Since my memory of 36 years ago was a little rusty,
that's all right, it's pretty close.
and I did remember strongly that we were, as special employees of the town, prohibited from campaigning for a ballot question.
Right,
And that's what I was trying to make sure we avoided any.
and that hasn't changed, the only thing that's really changed is the delivery method, and social media,
Yeah, that's
so it's
huge.
different, it's changed the.
Well, we were allowed to speak at a meeting
Uh-huh.
of, let's say, a local community group wanted to have someone to come in and explain the override to them. We could explain it. We could, the impact, what it meant, what it was covering,
Right,
the tax implications. We could just state the facts.
Right.
And then step aside.
yeah, it's pretty much the same thing.
Okay,
So Fred, are you defining yourself as a special employee because you're appointed?
yes, I am.
Right.
We
So
all
the-
are
So the
special
distinction is
employees.
appointment versus elected, right?
Right.
Yeah. So elected committee members can advocate for the override.
Now I have to double check.
I don't believe so.
I think elected or special.
I won't speak to it because I'm not sure.
Rainey, this is this is not your responsibility, this is our responsibility. You are appointed, the committee is elected. The information that I reviewed briefly is wonderful, but it's primarily focused I'm public employees, so I understand for Danielle, that's relevant, that's very different than elected officials. We have resources through our organization. So it's a little bit different for us, but we can certainly use.
Logic tells me that as an elected official in the community, you have an obligation to speak to the article, not to the override, for the benefit of the citizens, but that's my opinion on it. Who knows what the state thinks?
Well, and if you're elected by the same residents that are gonna be voted on, they want to know what your.
The position, right? That's what I would think.
Because we represent the people that elected us.
That is our job.
That's
As
right.
selectmen, that's it.
Yeah.
Right there. We represent the residents.
One other thing, Mary's updated the website on the finance committee site, there's a whole bunch of information there. We're going one step further, we're trying to create a few different things, basically a property tax. Tool, calculator, that you can look up your own property, you just type in your address and it'll tell you exactly what this thing would cost you. So everybody will be able to access that, so working with the assessor's office. We'll post.
That's very helpful.
We're trying to dump as much information out there as possible. Like I said, everything you saw tonight, you now have hard copies of it, but you've also got it sitting in your email. And Mary's gonna be uploading it to the website as well, so.
And there's documentation on what proposition 2.5,
Yeah, so if I
how you
could,
can,
Yeah,
if you-
there you go.
if I could just take a quick second for folks, especially those who are following along. Currently on the town's website, under the finance department page, you'll see that there are some additional links that have been added. There is one out here called Proposition 2.5, because I know there's a lot of questions about what is it, how does it work? So I have included a number of instructional videos that have been produced by the Department of Revenue's Division of Local Services, which is our regulatory agency. There's a lot of very helpful information out here on what is a tax levy, what is an override, how does it work? So I encourage people to go ahead and take a peek at this page here. And then in the left-hand navigation panel, you'll also see links to the school department's budget. So if we jump over here and scroll down to FY 26. All of the school department budgetary information is available for folks from our website. And then here for the town budget, the documents and recorded meetings that we have held to date have been included here. And this will be updated with all of the materials that we've just shared with everybody here this evening.
do you unlock that so we could get in? Remember when I talked to you?
So that's all been fixed.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
That was just for you.
yeah, exactly. Nope, that's all been fixed.
Would it be possible, because right now to get to that, I've got to go to departments, finance, and then look for that.
We're putting it on the front page.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Because, because it's all there, but we wanna make it a little easier, just kind of like call it override central, click on it, bang, and you're there.
Sorry, Matt, but if I can find it, anybody can find it. And I'm not very good at that.
We can't all be.
That's not my strength. If I have one.
And the other thing that I also do want to point out too is, Finance Committee has held numerous meetings throughout the course of this process. And we know that each of the departments came before the Finance Committee to do their presentations. There's a link for it, so on this page here, you'll find all of the agendas, minutes that have been reviewed and approved, as well as a link to the recording, if the recording is available. But I've also included here a calendar so that you can take a look at when the departments actually went before the Finance Committee, what's the date that they did their presentation, so that you can cross-reference this, and if you want to see the, say the police departments or the fire departments or the school departments presentations, you can come here and see the date that they presented before FinCom, and then look at the recorded meeting for that particular session.
Now, question that came up the other day was the individual report, the presentations, the different department heads gave us, some in writing, but usually it was electronically. Are they embedded in those minutes or not?
They are not embedded in your
Okay.
minutes, but I'm slowly gathering all of that information too.
Yeah, I've got them all in my bag, so maybe I can work with Linda after the holiday and get them all in.
We can
that makes
strategize,
sense.
yeah, sure.
So if a department submitted a budget as a presentation or a PDF or both, is there a reason why that artifact can't be uploaded and,
That's what Fran was just asking. So it has.
well, he said
the town's
embedded
never
in the
done.
minutes. I just wanna make sure that, I wanna make sure I understand. If it's embedded, like, will there be a file where I can download the PDF and download the presentation itself? I just wanna make sure I understand the
that's what
distinction between
Fred
that
was
and
just
embedded in the
asking.
minutes. Okay. So I'd have to go into the minutes to get it, is what you're saying?
No,
Yeah.
they would be separate.
Separate, so it wouldn't be, okay.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Oh, by the way,
We've got a lot.
graciously offered to take the minutes for tonight's
For
meeting.
tonight.
we were given a lot of information. I think the questions that we have for the time of year and the information that we have, I move we adjourn.
I just wanted to follow up one quick thing. The idea here was one
Thank you.
number once. This is the one number. This is the one time we wanted to go through this to get you to this point.
Thank you.
I know everybody wanted to have it before the holidays. Here it is. Good, bad, or otherwise, but I thought it best to just kind of, we wanted to give you the high level overview, get into a little bit of the weeds, but then give you everything so you can examine the weeds on your own. Come back with questions,
I think it's
tear
fair.
apart, rip apart, tell us what you love, tell us what you hate. We can talk through it all, and then we'll have a bigger meeting on the 9th, January.
How do residents do that?
Calls,
Individual residents.
emails, they've found me, I know they found you guys.
The five of us certainly have received individual comments.
Yeah.
On the regular budget.
Oh, it's
budget.
FinCom.
There, if people were to go to the Sustainable Budget Task Force, there's actually an email they can click on there, and it sends it right over to you, I believe, right? Who does it send it
To the group.
Oh, to the group, so they can email me, anybody, we're fully accessible. Yeah, but we welcome the question.
So I'm sorry to
It's
circle back. I think I understand what you're saying. And when you say embedded in the minutes, you don't mean embedded in the minutes document. You mean that list that's headed minutes that has all the minutes files underneath it. Is that what you're talking about? I'm sorry to be
Are
sticking.
you asking me or friend? I'm sorry.
Not asking me, because I don't know.
I just wanna, I think I understand what you're saying.
I'm not gonna put him on the finance committee minutes page, no. I'm gonna put it on the finance page.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. I just don't want to find this. Thank you.
Friend, if I may, Mary or Rainey, just to clarify, I guess the big, number, so to speak, when we're talking about 5.8, that comes down to just under $1,000 per
Yes.
house, per average house.
Right, and that's why I gave you that sheet first, so you can all have the number, and then you can see what it costs. That'll be the question top of mind for anybody, how much is it, what's it gonna cost?
Right, well, that's what I'm asking, because we're being broadcast, so I wanna make sure that folks.
And then the third question.
I have it right here, that
Yep.
you're kind enough to share with us, and.
Yep.
Want folks to know, that
Oh.
because
And
they're
the
saying,
third
what's it
question
gonna
is, can I
cost?
afford it? That's the real question.
That's for fiscal year 26.
Yeah, $993.72, that's it.
That was $930 for
Wait a
what?
minute.
The 5.8 million
Yes,
results in an increase of $993.72 for the average single family house, which is assessed at just under $1.25 million.
okay.
Let me call that up on the screen so that folks who are following, we still have over 20 people connected.
Oh, right, I got it.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, I see now, okay. And not hearing any other questions, we have a motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Well, meeting's adjourned.